We are in Derech Hashem, page 553. The Ramchal elaborates on the rectification gained by the Exodus. He says, for after the sin of Adam and Rishon, all of mankind was left in a corrupted state, as we have explained in part 1. Evil prevailed everywhere, as he explains. In the Nefesh HaChaim, he writes that as a result of the sin, evil became intermingled with Adam and with all the realms of creation. And so evil prevailed everywhere until there remained no place at all where good could gather strength. Although Avram Avinu of Shalom, may he rest in peace, was selected to be chosen for Hashem so that he and his children should be set apart from all the nations. And he says in part 2 that he showed how only Avram Avinu was chosen at the time of the Tower of Babel to found the nation that would correct Adam's sin. The Ramchal is now asking why the exile in Egypt was necessary when Avram was already chosen at an earlier time. So it continues, nevertheless, they still had no opportunity to gather strength and establish them as a perfected nation, which he says there is a difference between a group of individuals who have chosen to follow Hashem's ways and an entire nation that does. So individuals cannot bring about the same effect as a nation. That's an interesting concept. That if I have a nation doing it as compared to a couple of individuals doing it, it's nice and it's important for the individuals, but when I get everybody to follow along, so then I'm creating something. That can be the tikkun, the repair. So that's what you're saying. And so again, it's they had established themselves as a perfected nation and to be worthy of the crowns befitting them because of the evil that was spreading darkness over them, and the initial contamination from Adam's sin had not yet left them. So he explains. The Ramchal stated that the sons of Yaakov Avinu crowned themselves with Hashem's oneness when they said Shema. Remember, they said Shema and Shema Israel, listen to Israel, their father Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, and so Yaakov's response is, blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. So perhaps this is his meaning here, that the nation as a whole was not yet deserving of those crowns. However, Derech and others both states that he is referring to the crowns Klal Yisrael, the people of Israel, received at Sinai. They received 2 crowns, one for the word Naaseh, we will do, and one for the word Nishma, we will hear. So they should have said Nishma v'Naaseh, we will hear what you want and then we'll do it. They said the opposite, Naaseh v'Nishma, we will do and then we'll understand. That showed their total allegiance to Hashem and subservience to the law, to the halacha. And so that's why they received crowns for that. That's what the Midrash says. So he was referring to the crowns that Bnei Israel received at Sinai, where the Ramchal states that until the Exodus, the darkness of corporeality so prevailed over the body that the illumination of the Torah could not have any effect. Only after the Exodus was Israel elevated beyond the ordinary level of human nature to be able to be adorned with the crowns of holiness. And then he says in 238, the Gemara states that by the sin of Adam, the serpent contaminated the world. When Israel stood by Har Sinai, that contamination was fully removed from them. As such, they could not be elevated to the status of the nation of Hashem until they had been cleansed. So we're seeing a very interesting concept here. One is that when Adam brought the sin, Chava and Adam brought the sin into the world, Adam really, by the way, was responsible for this. Why was he really the main perpetrator here, even though he wasn't the one to take the fruit?
Because he was told not to, and he did it anyway.
You can come and learn.
Oh.
That's why I'm waving you in. Not to bother me, to come and learn.
I'm going to go to class.
Okay, yeah.
Because he told Eve, Chava not to touch it, and God wanted to eat it.
Correct. So since he told Chava, since he gave Chava bad advice, Since he gave Chava bad advice and told her something that she shouldn't he shouldn't have told her. He should have just told her, don't eat from the fruit, period. Don't touch it. So she touches it and then finally eats it, thus causing the whole dilemma that we're in. He's saying from that point, the Ramchal is saying that by that they brought darkness into the world. What does that mean? Evil into the world. That was overtaking everything. Why? Because they brought doubt of God's existence and rule into the world. That's really what the darkness is. And that was so prevailing, because if I can go against the Creator and do what I want, it must mean the Creator is not that powerful. Because the Creator should have stopped me, should have killed me, should have done whatever He's going to. Hashem said, the day you eat from it, you will surely die. And she doesn't die. Doesn't die. What Hashem wanted us to understand was the day that you eat from that fruit, you will be sentenced to death. I'll kill you when I want. But He doesn't say it like that. So if a parent would say to a child, on the day you do that, I'm going to punish you, and then you do it and you don't get punished immediately, so you say, okay, so my parents aren't, they're not honest with me. If they're not honest with me about this, then all the more so they're not honest about something else. They're withholding from me. So we start bringing all this doubt. They're not doubting God exists. They're not even doubting the power of God per se. What they're doing is doubting if they understand, or if God understands what they're doing, and maybe whether or not God can stop them. Maybe they are questioning power. That is darkness. That prevails over everything. That's why we can sin to this very day. That's why we can sin. That's why we can do what we want to do. We rationalize it. We say Hashem won't punish us. Hashem is wonderful, all loving, whatever the excuse we have for wanting to sin. Or we just say that we don't believe. It can be as simple as that. Okay, so but obviously Adam believed because he was talking to God. Chava talked to God. They all had discussions. Cain talked to God. Avram's talking to, people are talking to God and God's talking back. So clearly there's awareness of God in the world. But again, the lack was that there was already a doubt as to what Hashem is willing to do and what Hashem is capable of doing.
You said in that day you would die, but also a day is like 1,000 years too.
I heard that one time, that one woman was trying to convince me of that, and I like the interpretation. The truth is, I like it. I told her I like it, but it's not pshat. It's not simple understanding of the text, and that's the problem. Are we supposed to say that Chava and Adam didn't understand God? Is that what we really want to believe? Or that when Hashem said, "I'll kill you," that meant 1,000 years? Well, if that's true, by the way, they didn't make it to 1,000 either. Right. Adam lived till 930. Right. So
he did die in that day.
But I'm saying, right, it doesn't make sense to say the day is 1,000 years. It's a midrashic statement. It doesn't make sense to say that. Otherwise, you have 6,000 days. You should have realized how much a day is. And so, okay, so, by the way, if she would have if she would have thought about that it's 1,000 years in her earth years, then she wouldn't have given the fruit to everybody. Right? The only reason I'm going to know that God's not going to bother me is because I make it. I don't die. I don't get sick. You told me I would. I didn't get sick. So if I know that I have 1,000 years, so how do I know? It's the beginning of it. I just did it today. I have 1,000 years to go. I was just born. Again, it wouldn't make sense for the storyline to say that they understood that to be 1,000 years. It also wouldn't make sense in the storyline to say that it was 1,000 years we're talking about. Just wouldn't make sense. I like it. Don't get me wrong. When the woman said to me the first time, I said, I like it, but it's wrong. But I like it, though. I think it's a nice interpretation, but it's just not correct. That's all. Yeah, so then it says in 238, like I said, we already did that, fine. So therefore, back in the text, Therefore, it was on page 554. Therefore, it was necessary for them to be exiled to Egypt and enslaved there. In that immense servitude, they would be purified and refined like gold in a furnace. And he says, the verse states that Hashem took you and brought you out from the iron furnace from Egypt to be his designated nation. Rashi there explains that the verse is referring to a furnace used to purify gold. Thus, through the servitude of Egypt, the nation of Israel was purged of its impurities caused by the sin of Adam and those of subsequent generations. The Ma'amar HaChochma also says that Maror represents the bitterness that purified Israel. The Ma'amar Geula is looking at regarding the purification of exile through Jewish history. We have a whole thing. So when we're going through Egypt, it wasn't just to be enslaved. It wasn't just to see how the people are going to fulfill the promise that God said that you'll be strangers in the land for 400 years. But it was something that we needed to go through in order to purify us from the sin. Yeah.
During Egypt, didn't we reach the 49th level of impurity, or however, the one away from the last?
And yes, the rabbis say that in Egypt we reached the 49th level of impurity of tumah, and that we wouldn't have got up besides that. But what happens here is that while we got to that level of tumah, what he's arguing is that servitude is what made us viable. Why were we getting stuck down there? Because like here in America, Baruch Hashem for America, by the way. I'll say it straight out. Baruch Hashem. We should have the same shalom we've had for the last 300 years. But it's like in America, we don't want to leave America. With all the mishigatzas going on today, with the election, the hatred is coming out, the anti-Semitism that is permeating throughout the world, as well as the U.S., but it's not as bad as the rest of the world. You would think that we would be all running to Eretz Yisrael today. We would sell everything out and move, and if you're going to die in the land that is our land. Okay, that's what you would think. The truth is that we're not doing that. Whether we live in America or whether we live in Europe, for the most part, we're not leaving our homes. We're staying in our homes, adopted countries, if you will, and we're assuming this too will come to pass. And that's what they were doing in Egypt. So, and that was part of the submersion into the culture. We would see them doing idolatry. It probably became part of them, although it says we didn't do that. We didn't change our names and certain things. And that sort of level kept us above falling to the 50th. If we would have stayed longer, we would have been lost. That's what the rabbis are saying. The Ramchal is going a little further, though. He says the servitude is what was and he's getting that from the verse in Devarim, is that the very work is what's cleansing us. So on one hand, we're sinking. On the other hand, we're being cleansed. We're being purified. We're being made into a nation. And let's understand, if the Egyptians would have left us alone, like the Americans, leave us alone for the most part, how much assimilation is in this country? Even amongst the Orthodox.
If they had left alone.
If they would have left us alone, then they would have had the same thing that happened here. We'd have 90% assimilation, and you would have kids called Kyle instead of Moshe. It would be what? You know what I mean by Kyle, right? Okay.
Maybe Moshe is.
No, Moshe is a Hebrew name. It's not an Egyptian name. It's not. They had. He has some other Egyptian name, I'm sure. She called him Moshe because it said she drew him from the water. But again, that's using Hebrew. It's probably the translation of what they had. I have no idea what he was really called over there. But the point is that we use our English names. Or if you're in Germany, you would use your German name. If you're in Russia, you use your Russian names. In Egypt, they never gave up their names. Why didn't they give up their names? Because they weren't free. They weren't free people. They were enslaved. So if I'm enslaved, I'm not going to take on the slave names. They can come what they want, but I'm not going to take it on. I'm going to keep using my Hebrew names. I'm going to keep my culture alive that way. You understand? So that was what made us into a nation. That's what was the what's the expression? The crucible. That was the crucible that made us who we are. That we didn't give that up. We didn't give up our clothes. We dressed with our sisters. We did whatever we were going to do. Again, that was part of slavery, though. Just like when the blacks were slaves in America, we may have called them whatever we called them, but Kunta Kinte was still Kunta Kinte. For those who remember roots. Okay. That's what he's saying here. Okay. So now when the proper time arrived, Hashem strengthened his hashpa'ah. Again, this is a divine influence and illumination over Israel, and humbled the evil before them. So in Marmar Chachma, the Ramchal writes that in order to redeem Israel from Egypt, Hashem had to reveal some of his holiness, so that the souls of Israel would be drawn after it and become elevated, thereby separating themselves from the Tumah in which they were entrenched. That was your question. This was accomplished through the Pesach sacrifice, by which Israel withdrew from idolatry and substituted it with mitzvah observance. By the way, one other thing. Remember, 80% of the Jewish people died in Egypt because they didn't want to leave. According to the Midrash, 80% never left. They died in the days of darkness, and they were buried. But so you have 20% walking out. So you're talking about assimilation there, and you see the same thing here. You don't want to. That's why in America you have such a kiruv movement, where you have everybody wanting to get the non-religious to come back, because we don't want another Holocaust like that, where we lose into assimilation. We don't. How much we're willing to spend and get everybody back, it's an interesting question. What we're willing to do, also an interesting question. But that's why the Orthodox groups are out there, like Lubavitch, like Esher Torah, or Sameach, Midrash Torah Center. That's why we're really out there to say, okay, let's see what you're losing. Let's try to bring you back. However, whatever that means for the individual, by the way. Some of us are going for Shomer Shabbos, some of us are not. Some of us are just going for realize you're Jewish. It can be that simple. And we want people to, stop giving up carte blanche, what you have. You are who you are. You're royalty, if you will. And I don't mean that in the... I know people get all upset when I start saying that, but really we're God's chosen people for that. We're chosen to be the model nation. As a model nation, we have a responsibility. I remember there was a movie, King George. I guess it was a movie, King George. It was about King George who went nuts. And that was his name, King George? Sorry? Yeah. Something like that. So King George, well, he had the insanity of King George, something like that. That was the name of the show. And he recovers, and England is changing, and he says to his family, who is constantly fighting with each other, they hate royalty, they hate themselves as royalty, he said, we have a role that we have to fulfill. Deal with it. That's the end of the show, basically. We have a role. So I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. Nothing to do with that. Chosen people doesn't mean I'm better. As a matter of fact, I can be much worse. What it means is I have an obligation to be Hashem's representative on this world and show people that it's possible to follow the Torah. And that it's not something that's in the heavens, that's so far away, and so on and so forth. That's what chosen people means. So that's to say we're royalty. Why would you give up your royalty for that? Why? And whether or not you like it, deal with it. You're part of the family. And that's really, again, what the Kiruv movements are. Sorry?
I wish Kevin was here.
That's really what the Kiruv movements are all about. That's when people are saying, okay, we have to let you know what you're all about. And they don't want the same thing to happen in Egypt, that 80% flitter away and die. They're not looking for that. Whether or not they will accomplish it, I have no idea. Right now, we are so far behind the 8 ball, it's not even funny. Because even amongst the different movements that we have, the affiliated are probably 30%. whatever that means, affiliated to. That means that I give money to UJA or something like that. That's affiliation for people. So whatever, and that was a Pew study. So we're really at a very bad situation, also in America. But that's because they leave us alone. They let us assimilate. In Egypt, they didn't let us assimilate. In Egypt, they kept us in our place, Goshen, and we had to work for them. And we were seen as a separate group. We had our separate schools. We had a whole thing. But we were seen as separate. They couldn't eat bread with us. That's straight text from the Torah. They couldn't eat bread with us because it was disgusting to them. So their anti-Semitism, if you will, is what allowed us to grow into a nation. If not for them, crazy enough, we would have intermarried with them. And then there would be nothing. Those 12 tribes, 12 sons would have sooner or later, or their children would have lived in the neighborhoods, would have been over long before that. Yeah?
Just in my mind, I'm drawing similarities.
It's in your mind what?
In my mind, I'm drawing similarities between Egypt and the Jews, how they're acting, and then what happened in Germany. Because when Hitler made his laws, it wasn't kill them at first, but the laws that separated the Jews from the Germans.
Correct. Hitler, Germany was the same. By the way, all of Europe was the same, which is why in Europe we stayed much more separate than we have here. Not to say that in Germany they did not have intermarriage, they did, because it was convert. If you converted, you could be part of us. Hitler didn't like that at all. Hitler wanted to have the Aryan race, so he didn't like Jews at all. And amongst others, we were just one of his pet projects. But it's like I'm saying, Europe kept us separate. They kept us in ghettos. So once again, we're separate from the group, and that's where a lot of our response came from, because we're in that situation. A lot of growth, inward growth, came from that, and also our desire to stay away from the goyim. If you ever want to know where that concept of goy becoming a negative word came from, Europe. That's where it came from. Because wherever you went, they were killing you, just because you're Jewish. So there was like, stay away from the goyim. That's when goyim came the bad word, not before that. We were called goy echad, one nation. Goy only means nation, but it became a term. That's where you also got the word shegitz, which means a crawling, detestable shiksa for the female. Again, from sheketz, crawling bugs. That's because the non-Jews were killing us, and we're like, we have to stay away. So they came up with all these different terms. But that's really where it's coming from. You don't have this in Sephardi. They don't even know what you're talking about when you go to Sephardi. They may have their own terms, I don't know. But certainly they don't have those.
When Israel first went down into Egypt, they weren't slaves right away. They took pretty good at first.
They were brought in by Pharaoh. Yeah. They were considered good people. Yeah. And what happened was, when they started to, I want to say replicate, but that's not right. When they had children, so they were having a lot of children at once. So it was a population explosion, and Pharaoh, it says a new Pharaoh arose.
They didn't know.
That either didn't know Yosef or didn't want to know Yosef. The problem was, he saw that his population was being taken over by this Jewish population, who were just expanding exponentially. And so he said, we have to do something about this to limit them. So he wanted to take them down. So the Midrash says he didn't make them slaves at first either. He says, who would like to help? I'm going to build Piton and Ramses. Who would like to be part of that? So of course the Jews volunteered. The king's asking. They went down. So he signed up everybody. Says, okay, you're here today, you'll be here tomorrow, and next day after that too. So, and you're working for free. Good. Okay. We want to show all loyalty. Volunteer work. That's what we call DPW. No, actually, no. It's called, what's it called? The Peace Corps. We actually have that, the Peace Corps, where they go for nothing. They volunteer. And nobody really thinks much of the Peace Corps. If you would tell them you're in the Peace Corps, they would say, so what do you do for a living? How do you support yourself? I think they're doing great work, but I'm not denigrating them, but I'm just saying that we don't really respect that. It's on the resume. I don't know how far I'll get into a job. Just say I was working for the Peace Corps. Nice stuff. But that's what's going on there. So once they got them working, now they enslaved them. Slowly, it was a slow process. They gave special taxes. You talk about Germany, they gave special taxes to the immigrant, to the Jewish immigrant. So it's a Jewish tax. Hitler wasn't the first one, and Mr. Hashem, he'll be the last one. Hopefully he's the last one who did that to us, but he charged us for being Jewish. And so did they. So it was a slow progression.
Yeah.
But when it did happen, it happened. Okay. It's like what's going on in America.
Like getting taxed.
By the way, no, if it's going on,
Tax more.
you know who brought this up one time? I'm going to show my Bekias and TV. Bewitched. In the old days of Bewitched, you don't know what Bewitched is. Bewitched, they had Aunt Clara. Really, I'm giving my Bekias here. Aunt Clara brought back Benjamin Franklin to whatever year that was. And so he went to the park and he started to speak his mind. Police said, "Where is your permit?" He said, "I have the right according to the Constitution, freedom of speech." They said, "Very nice, old man, but you need a permit." So there was that was Bewitched getting political, saying that we've lost our rights. Now, Bewitched was in the 70s.
60s.
I'm not that old. Okay.
60s.
60s.
Reruns you watched.
60s. Okay. 60s. So in the 60s, and you're seeing that in the 1960s, mind you, you're seeing that we're talking about we're losing our rights. Slowly but surely, we're losing our rights. So the same thing, it doesn't take, think about how long it would took for anything to get to the point where it got today, that we're fighting about bathrooms. Think about that. That's how crazy this is. We've lost our rights as individuals going for the minorities' ultimate thing, and they think the majority, and it's just insanity after a while. You don't know, you know where you're going. But we're losing our rights the same way that they lost their rights. It's a slow process. It's like the frog in the hot water, who doesn't realize it until they die. Because they won't jump out, because they don't realize it's a slow boil. Same thing here. Same thing there, same thing here. It's constantly the same thing. Okay. So then it says, so we're going on he humbled the evil before them. It says, the Ramchal writes that there are 4 primary levels of Tumah that took control after the sin of Adam Arishon. That is why 4 expressions of redemption are used in the Torah regarding the Exodus. Their control over Israel was broken through the illumination of the 4 letters of Hashem's name. We noted above that evil becomes humbled when Hashem's sovereignty is acknowledged, while it becomes completely eradicated when Hashem's oneness is revealed. Apparently, the exodus from Egypt affected a complete awareness of Hashem's sovereignty, but not a complete revelation of His oneness, since the powers of evil were only humbled and not abolished. Again, this is a concept of the cop is in front of you, you're not going to break the law. If the cop is not in front of you, but you see a sign, or you actually, you know what? You know when you do this? Again, I think people still do this on the roads. If you see a police officer and you want to warn somebody, you flash the lights. It's the flashing of lights. So if I see the flashing of lights, I know, slow down, cop ahead. Right. Now, there may not be a cop ahead. Many people flash lights for whatever reasons, and either the cop took off or whatever, but you're looking and saying, so where's the cop? You're really looking, but you slow down. You slow down so they accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. And that's what's going on here too. We were humbled. But what happens when you go a little further and you see there's no cop? Back up to the speed. Okay, so humble is not totally abolished. Now Hashem set them apart from it, which uplifted them from the degraded state in which they had been, and elevated them to Him. So He explains that since the forces of evil were only humbled but still existed, Hashem had to separate Israel from them. However, the Ramchal writes in Marma Chachma that eventually Israel will completely conquer these 4 forces, which will turn on the nations of the world and give them 4 cups of punishment, whereas the Jews will have 4 cups of salvation. And these are represented by the 4 cups of wine, which we drink in the Seder. Now you may say, wait a second, that's not fair. Why should the nations be punished? First of all, they're just the only reason that we're in the mess that we are is because we sinned. If we didn't sin, then Hashem wouldn't have to punish us. If Hashem didn't have to punish us, so he wouldn't have to send these nations. So these nations are only the servants of God. Why are you picking on these poor servants? They're innocent bystanders, right? That's what everybody would want to say. I had to do it because you deserved it. Okay. The answer is that while we may have deserved it, you don't have to be the punisher. Okay? When you take it upon yourself to be God's whip, when you take it, again, if God told you straight out, you need to do this, well, you don't have the right to say no to that. But if God's not telling you, it just says in general terms, I will have to afflict my people. And suddenly a Sancheiriv or a Hitler or a Makshimam or any one of these guys come up and says, I'll volunteer. Excuse me, I didn't need you. I have a lot, God speaking, I have a lot of things that can get my job done. I can bring floods. I can bring lightning. I can bring pestilence. I don't need you people. I really don't. I got it covered. Believe me, I got it covered, okay? I don't need you guys. And then whatever happens, and then what happens is, they say, no, I'm good. I'm the guardians. I have to do it. I'm the surrogate parent. So they go in and they, not only do they punish us, but they get power hungry. And again, all these experiments are done with people. When you guys learn psychology, you're going to see all these different experiments, besides Milgram, which we talked about last time. You have another thing where they, following the same sort of concept, where people are made guards of a jail. It's a game. People are made prisoners, and the other people are made guards. The guards always become sadistic.
I saw a movie about that.
I don't know. It was an actual experiment, so I don't know. But
TV show.
Okay, but that's what happens. We become very zealous, overzealous in our application of what we think we should be doing. For that, Hashem punishes us. That's why the Talmud Devorah says, you may think that it should just be enough when we do tshuva for Hashem to take these people away. No, Hashem says, I have to punish you too. You did went too far. You shouldn't have done it. You should let me take care of it myself. So for all those people who say, I was just following orders, no such thing. No such thing. You have a responsibility to listen to the Torah, and that's it. Because if your parent is so far, if your parents would tell you to do something opposite to the Torah, you're not allowed to listen. The Torah says, honor your father and mother. Yeah, they have to honor me too, though. They have to respect me too, my laws. God speaking. So if they tell you to break it, you cannot listen. You must transgress the commandment of listening to your parents. Okay? So all the more so, these guys who are coming out, men, women, who want to punish us, you'll be taken down. Okay, that's what we're coming with. Okay, yeah.
Is that under breaking the Torah to save the Torah?
No, breaking the Torah to save the Torah is when an example would be, it says you can't listen to a woman singing. Right? A woman singing is because of a verse in Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, that says woman's voice is pleasant, and it's so you can't learn Torah around that, or you can't pray around that, and so on and so forth. So what happens is, in a society where women are walking around, married women are walking around, Jewish married women are walking around without their heads covered, or singing in public, or whatever they're going to do. If we wouldn't learn Torah whenever that was a possibility, we would never learn Torah. So we have to break the law in order to keep the law at that point. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, we push that law to a side. In this case, we both are obligated to follow God. So it's not that I'm, by me following Shabbos, if my parents would say to me, you must break Shabbos, you can't tell me that because you don't have the power to do that. I'm Osip a mitzvah. I'm already operational one mitzvah. So your mitzvah to listen to you was nullified because you told me to break something. I can't do that. So it's not that I threw it out. It's just that it wasn't operational. Unlike the other one, which I had to abandon. I just had to abandon it, because if I don't abandon it, then I can never learn Torah or study or you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what if is
There you go.
the rules in English, they have their things that don't apply. I after E, except after C,
Exceptions to law, right?
The law is if there's a good reason for breaking it, like we don't have a phone, you have your phone on you, and it's Shabbos, you need to call the police or the ambulance or something. Break the Shabbos so you can save this person's life.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that's not breaking the Shabbos.
Yeah.
That's not considered breaking Shabbos. That is considered following the law to save the life. So the law doesn't apply. You're not breaking it. The law is now you need to call.
If the shul's on fire and you grab a Torah scroll and carry it out where there's no Eruv.
It's not.
That's already a different question. That's not as clear.
Not as clear.
It's surely not as clear.
Okay.
A person's life is clear.
Right.
A person's life is you have to save the person's life, assuming that it's not one of the three things: adultery, and murder. Right. So as soon as it's not one of those three things, then you become obligated to do it. So within the laws, I'm obligated to call or do something to get the police or whatever I have to get. So it's not really breaking the law at that point. I'm really following the law. That's the quote-unquote exception to the law. Okay? It's not, again, the breaking of the law would be like I said. You can't have a woman singing if you're learning Torah. But they're in here, so I'm still going to learn Torah, otherwise I'll never learn Torah. So I have to break that law. I have to push that one aside to make this. And there's other examples, I'm just using that one, where we have to actually ignore, throw it away for the others. The other ones are not, it's not a loophole, it's just what it is. Sometimes I have the exception. I prefer E after, not accept F to C. Right? And then even more.
That's why we used to go to Mea Shearim to get stoned on Shabbos.
Okay. As we go on. Okay, good. I would say, yeah. So that was 242, right? That's what we were, 242? Right, 243. So once the forces of evil were humbled, Israel was no longer dragged down by evil and the contamination of the previous generations. They could thus come close to Hashem, as the verse states in Exodus, and I brought you to me. Imam Ramchal writes that in order for Israel to be physically ready for the appropriate divine illumination, they are required to eat matzah for 7 days each year, a food which represents the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, to completely devoid of the Yetzer Hara. Leavened bread is symbolic of the Yetzer Hara because it's puffed up. In this manner, they remain readied for holiness the entire year. Okay, that's where he's going with that. So now we continue, and it says, as a result of this, they were redeemed from the evil eternally, and from then onwards, they were established as a perfect nation in the state of Devekis to Hashem and crowned through him. So he explains, although evil would continue to exist, Israel would never again be controlled by it. Even so, as a nation, in other words, it wouldn't be that overpowering. We have to overcome it, but that's an individual level. Even so, the Ramchal writes in Marmar that each year we are meant to strengthen the gains achieved during the Exodus until the rectification of the world is completed, which is why the Ramchal, besides the Torah saying we have to do it, that would be a reason we have to go through all of the Seder and everything else, and Pesach, eating matzah and so on and so forth. And he says this is a goal that the Ramchal stated above, that there should be an entire nation committed to serving Hashem, dedicated to rectifying the transgression of Adam Arishon. So really, and by the way, what was his transgression in the grand scheme of things? Adam Arishon.
Not telling his wife the wrong thing.
That's the second part. What's the first part? Not listening. not listening to Hashem. Because even if he told his wife, don't touch it, and don't even eat from it, and she takes from it, he knew what the fruit looked like. What kind of idiot are you? Why are you eating it? Let her die. I told you don't touch it. I gave you a warning. Don't touch it, don't eat it. She eats it. And, okay, now she says, hey, this tastes good. You know what it is? It's poison. Why would I want to eat poison? Because I don't believe. That's where the Yitzhar is. I don't believe. There's a bit of doubt here. That's the sin. Whenever we sin.
So if she would have ate it, she would have died.
Bye-bye.
God would have made her a new wife.
Well, whatever. God can do whatever he wants. Yeah. Right.
He had lots of ribs.
Lots of sides. But the point is that why would Adam eat it? The only reason he's eating it because she's saying, hey, look how tempting this is. It's like, I'll never forget when I was at Costco, and the woman said to me, would I like to eat this? I said, I'd love to eat it. I would love to eat it. I can't. I'm kosher. Wait. So she said to me, but it tastes good. Right? I thought it was funny that she said, but it tastes good. But that's Eve. But it tastes good. It looks good. Don't you want it? I had it. Didn't get hurt. Again, what kind of idiot are you? God told you don't touch it. Don't eat it. So don't eat it. But if you want, I would let her sit for 1,000 years. Following your interpretation, let her sit for 1,000 years, and when you don't die, so you know what? You must have some merit that you didn't die on, because God told me I shouldn't eat it. I'm not touching that stuff. Yeah.
So maybe he loved her so much that he thought if he partook in it too, God might have more mercy on her, because he also was guilty,
Well, he was guilty for telling her, don't touch her. As far as he loved her, I don't know if he loved her. He just met her that day.
There was a song about that in Fiddler on the Roof.
I don't know. Do you love me? I don't know.
How long was it between the time?
It was only an hour. It was only an hour. That's all it was. It went to the rabbis.
Really?
That's all it was. It was quick. 1, 2, 3. Boom, 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 boom. Wow. But even if you take it a little longer, so love is a little response. Does he love her? Is he worried about her? They don't give that reason. They say that he wanted to, as some people say, that Adam wanted to make it a little more difficult for himself. So he decided he's going to eat this fruit and then work his way back. I explained to somebody, it's very interesting. Everybody looks at the Yetzer Hara as an enemy. I said, and that's why he was trying to go with this. Why do you call him an enemy? Maybe it's your friend. So how can he be a friend? I said, look, the Yetzer Tov tells you this is the easy road. Follow these rules. It's an easy road. You just go with them. The Yetzer Hara says to you, he's a big coach, and he says, hey, it's true you can go that way, but think about how much credit you could build up if you take the hard road. Put a little more effort into it. Come on, let me push you and push you and push you. And you think, you know what, it's not such a bad idea. I'll be pushed. And so I'll go a little off, and I'll come back. I'll show how good a guy I am and how much strength I have. And he's not a tempter per se. He's trying to make you go the hard way.
So it's a big.
I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying that one should follow that. I would rather go the easy way, the easy route. If I have a straight path, it's much easier to go a straight path. But let's face it, we like to go around the block once in a while.
It's like the furnace of gold.
The what?
The furnace of gold
The furnace of gold?
in Egypt.
Oh, okay, right. You have to go through that. You have to go through the crucible. Again, would I advise people to go the circuitous route? No. I would advise everybody to go straight through. And as a matter of fact, in Maine, I'll never get this. In Maine, you could follow 95 straight. Or you could cut, there's another way you could go, which would ultimately be straighter than 95, because 95 went around. One of them went around. And I used to go around because that was...
More scenic.
No, not more scenic. That was a highway, so you're just following that. And I didn't realize that if I cut off to one side until my wife showed me the map. I don't know how to read maps. My wife's the director. If without my wife, I'd be lost. Okay. So the now I have GPS. Thank God for that.
Profound, yeah.
Right, right. There you go. Okay. But she showed me that no, we can go straight. So you must have got off the highway to get on the highway, whatever it was, and we saved 2 hours. We saved not 2 hours. We saved an hour's trip instead of going around. I said, but it says it's supposed to go around. She said, look at the map. The map is clear.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I followed her, and so we saved time. The point, what you do lose out, by the way, is you don't have gas stations on that way. The other way, you have gas stations, so you have to know to fill up before. Oh, I have enough I have enough to get there, or you have to get off the highway, whatever the case is going to be. So but that's the easy way. Clearly, it's the easy way as compared to the hard way. Well, going around, you kill more time, and that's the Yetzer Hara. No, go for the longer road. It's better. It's better.
You learn more.
You learn more, you see more people. You have to stop at a couple of rest stops, get some. You have to meet people. Somebody's looking for you. That's really is what is going. We're both going to get to the same place. You're going to end up in the same place. I said if you look at the Yetzer Hara like that, it's a much different thing. And by the way, I'm not alone when I said that. It was just an interesting way of looking at the Yetzer Hara as compared to the Yetzer Tov. Okay, well, we will have to stop here then.
And I confuse it by giving in, without.
I said a long time ago, I defeated my Yetzer Tov years ago. No problem.